the examples of the Lord asking his people to set up monuments and altars in remembrance of what God did. 1 Samuel chapter 7 and then 7 through 13 and verse 12. Then Samuel took a stone and he set it up between Mizpah and Shin and called its name Ebenezer, saying, thus far the Lord has helped us. Thus far the Lord has helped us. And really marvelous example and scripture there, saints. Thus far the Lord has helped us. And this whole concept, the whole idea here that Samuel was doing was he was obeying the Lord. And many times when Israel crossed over the Jordan, they set up stones and they set them up as a memorial so that they could go back to that spot and they could remember by seeing it and remember what the Lord had done for them. And when we build buildings like we've built here and other parts of the building and now the new addition, when we do that, we are setting up a memorial for the longevity of life and years to come, when I'm sure I'll be dead and gone. There'll still be this large green roofed building up here, because it is a testimony to the glory of God that there's been a people who had faith, a people who trusted and believed God, a people who dared to sacrifice by giving so that this place called the house of God could be a memorial and could be stood for years to come, for people to ride by or people to come and know that God is still in this house. And I know that in the years coming that the glory of God, I believe there's a major revival coming. I'm not sure when, but I believe there's a major revival that will sweep across America as in times past. And I believe that there's the prayers of God's saints are coming up before the Lord. I believe we're going to see that kind of outpouring of the glory of God. We have a responsibility as church people is to make sure that we remember that what we're doing today is not necessarily just for us. Deuteronomy 4:9, God was concerned that the children of Israel would forget the phenomenal things that he had done throughout their history, and he commanded them to teach them to their children and to their children after them. And he said, only be careful and watch yourselves closely so that you do not forget the things your eyes have seen or let them slip from your heart as long as you live. Teach them to your children and to their children after them. How many of you hear that? Saints, every church has a call of God. If it's really a genuine church that is born of God's purpose and God's Spirit, every church has a unique call. This church has a unique call. And the front of the bulletin kind of is a piece of what I said throughout the whole of that message. You could get the tape. And but I really believe strongly that Rock City Church has a divine destiny. It has a destiny of an appointment of God. And we come together and we labor before God and we reach out and we do all that we do. And we have battles and we have struggles and we have demonic forces that are inside the church as well as those on the outside. And there came a voice. Mark says, and there came a voice. How many of you are glad there's a voice? Now today, what I'm talking to you about is there is a rhema word. Rhema is the reference in the Hebrew for a living word, a word that comes out of the mouth of Jehovah God himself. And that trumps all other messages and all other words. There is a living word that comes. Have you hear that? And the voice of God, the voice of the Lord, boy, is that powerful that you and I can realize in this day we live in that God himself is still speaking. There are people that think God died. Sorry, I was talking to him this morning. He's not dead. Now, God still speaking today, and the importance of his voice is so important in this day, because there are people today that believe that God doesn't speak. There's a people today that believe that God only speaks through certain types of things, certain kinds of things, certain people, etc. But I believe God cannot be put in a box. God is talking today, if we'll listen. And there came a voice from heaven, saying, "Thou art my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased." Now, this is when Jesus was being baptized. And I want you to know, saints, you don't want to forget this. The voice of God is the voice that must confirm your ministry. If you're going to minister for God on the earth, there must be and there was a voice, or there came a voice. There must be a voice of God that brings affirmation to your earthly realm from the heavenly realm. You have to have a literal voice of God. Do you hear me today? Some are looking through the catalog of gifts and talents, and when we have a clear example of Jesus and his life and how he heard from the Father, as I read to you, in baptism, and that word confirmed that he was who he was. How many of you know, when we want fatherhood in the church today, what we're looking for is a confirmation of who we are. We want identity. We want to belong. Come on. And listen to this. Sonship is not predicated on the whim of a man, but on the voice of God. What makes the difference in sonship is the ability for you to hear God and the ability for that father to speak and God speak through them. Now, a spiritual father is someone whose life and ministry raised you up in so many ways out of the mire of immaturity into a proper growth and order for your life. When God gives a word, and when God uses a father in our life, it's the word that father has that can be spoken in right season in our life, and that word changes things. How many of you hear that? And it's when we avoid that word that we fail to ever realize true sonship. That's why those who are occasional churchgoers, those that come and they only come, a little while, or maybe come on a Sunday morning or something, and they're only there because they want to get just a little bit. They're not really developing a father-son relationship, because if they wanted that, they'd be sure to hear what the Father had to say. How many of you know that Jesus spoke? God the Father spoke when Jesus was getting baptized and told everybody, "This is my son." Hello? You stay with me, you're going to see something. A spiritual father is the one whose words pierced beyond the veneer of a blessing into the very heart and the marrow of your existence, causing massive realignment to take place in your spirit. You see, when it's a word from God and you are present and you hear that, it realigns you, it sets you, it corrects something that's out of twist in your life. How many of you hear that? And when it's a word from God, that word comes and puts you back on the right track. How many of you hear? And when you have that relationship and you know that it's your Father speaking, how many of you know that you don't want to miss what your Father has to say? You understand that? A spiritual father is the one whose words pierced, I said, through the veneer of a blessing into your very heart. Jesus did not begin his ministry until the voice of the Father was spoken in the earth. Matthew 3:17. That's what we said. And lo, a voice from heaven saying, this is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased. He never did any ministry till that in the earth until that word came. How many of you hear that? How many of you know that a lot of people today who are struggling through their Christian experience and are dealing with things they shouldn't have to deal with is because they haven't had the Father's voice spoken over their life?